Well, hello, good morning. So glad you could join us wherever you may be. He, of course, is Matt Shepard. I'm Sean Baligian. A special Thursday morning edition of Shep and Sean. Shep, one of those national holidays for people all around the nation. Make no mistake about it. I don't care who you are. And look, anybody knows me. I didn't grow up the biggest baseball fan. Somehow, some way, my son became a huge baseball fan, which made me go like that. I really love the game. Is it my favorite sport? Absolutely not. But I don't care what your favorite sport is. Shep, there's something magical, dare I say mythical, about the words opening day. And a lot of people are celebrating that today.
Yeah, it does. I don't think it matters whether your team is at home or on the road, Sean. It's where you want to be. You want to be in front of the television set. You want to see just a glimpse, of what you may be in store for. I think home opening day is one massive party. It's more about the event than it is the team. If your team's on the road, it's more about the game. And I think just the fact that it's back, that now you can set your DVR, you can set your schedule knowing that your team is going to be playing basically every day. And you can monitor how your team is doing, how your young players are progressing, the types of moves your manager is making and things of that nature. Right? There's a feel about it. Sometimes it's difficult to explain, but when you show up at the ballpark, like any professional event, any college event, you show up that as calling games, you show up and you're a little early than everybody else, and you just want to take it in. You look around and you kind of take it in. I know when I did football, you're walking the sidelines and you're talking to coaches and players, and there's a cool feel to that when you're walking the sidelines with an NFL coach or a player, just chatting it up a little bit. In baseball, you get there so early, you get a chance to go into the clubhouse, just say hi to guys. You're sitting in a manager's office, whether it's your home manager or your visiting manager, and you're just chopping it up. On opening day, they're a little bit more loose. They're a little bit easier. They're freer because everybody's in a good mood because you're back playing the game that you love watching or the game you love playing and managing.
Shep, it is so crazy, and I know for you as a father, I'm going to guess that you agree with me. There's just something about baseball and your kids, too. I don't know what it is. Maybe, hell, we blame Kevin Costner for Field of Dreams. I don't know, but there's something with going to a game with your kids that I say, even as I've never hit it, hockey by far my favorite sport. But there's something different about going to a ball game. Maybe it's the pace. Maybe it's some of the things that you talked about. I don't know what it is, but of course, with my son away in LA and my daughter, of course, is up at Michigan State right now. That's one thing I'm thinking about. I'm like, okay, when am I going to take my kids to a game? And I don't know if that's going to happen. I know we're going out to Anaheim to see the Tigers take on the Angels in late June and visit my son. But Shep, that's something I think of going to games with my father, my late father. I think about my kids. There's just something that's so right and brings those two worlds together when you're talking about a baseball game.
Yeah, what is it about baseball? Look, you've taken your kids to hockey games, you've taken them to basketball games, you've taken them to football games. What is it about baseball? Is it outdoors? Is it being outdoors?
Maybe that's it.
And having, I think, just because you don't, I wouldn't say have to pay attention, but you don't have to be laser focused on every single moment of the game to have a conversation. Whereas in hockey, you could miss something like that.
Yeah.
Basketball, you've got the music going on, so it can be a little challenging. Football, there's so many lulls in football. But baseball, there's something, dare I say, romantic about it, where you can sit with somebody. It doesn't even have to be your son, but it could be a friend. I mean, you and I could just be there drinking a beer, having a hot dog, and just chatting it up while we're watching the game, and it doesn't have to be intrusive to anybody close to us. And I love that about baseball. I think more than anything, especially for us here in Detroit, it's being outdoors because we've been cooped up for a while. And now we get the chance to go outside, get the rays, see the sun, smell the grass. There's nothing like walking onto a ballpark or into a ballpark, onto a ballpark field and smelling the grass.
Yeah.
I know a little bit of a strange habit, but I would always go into the dugout, grab a player's glove, and smell it. I love the smell of baseball glove leather. I love the feel of a baseball bat. I love the sounds of a baseball bat striking a ball in batting practice. Those are all just little things that mean so much. And look, I get that same feeling in a lot of other sports. I'm sure you do. The
Sure.
shaving of ice and the slapping of a puck. It's
Mhm.
different, but it's still unique. When you hear a swish in a basketball net or in football, when you hear a guy say hit and then he quickly throws an out pattern, you can feel that ball hit the gloves of a wide receiver. Those are all special intricacies of these sports that I think really gravitates us toward them. I mean, it's really hard to explain, but you know it as you feel it. You know what I mean?
You brought up the term romantic, and I think that's a
Yeah,
perfect word to use. I'm serious.
yeah,
How many times have you heard somebody say something along the lines of this when talking about, our old venerable Tiger Stadium? Walking
yeah,
up the ramp, and
yeah,
it was almost a holy experience when you walked up the ramp and
yeah.
you got near the top of the ramp and you could look out and see that beautiful green field. I mean,
Mhm.
I have an image indelibly etched in my mind about that, Shep. There's
Yep.
just something about it that I've never been able to put my finger on. It just is. Sometimes things can't be explained, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about baseball is there are certain things that in this society where we want to figure out the why about everything. Well, I don't
Yeah.
need to figure out why, it just is.
Yeah, I'll never forget going into Tiger Stadium, and that was kinda like it was our mecca, right, for
Yeah.
you and I. It
Yeah.
was our haven. And I think the reason it was so special to me is because when I would go there with my dad, I just felt really close
Sure.
to my father, and, I'll never forget going to that last game. I mean, walking up that ramp and seeing the tiger stripes painted on the side of one of those walls as you walk out there, and I got there early, there was nobody there, and you just look out and you're like, "Man, this is what I love." I mean, I truly love that place, and I still have the dirt,
Yeah.
from third base that I collected, at Tiger Stadium. I don't know if people or young people, Jack and my kids, I don't know how if they feel that way about Comerica Park. I think it's probably more the experiences that you have, and let's face it, how good the team is,
Yeah.
and I think the Tigers should be pretty good this year. I really do. If they could stay healthy, are they going to be as good as the Twins? I don't know. We'll see. I do worry about certain players and their health. And I think it's fair to say it was a disappointing offseason that you didn't go out and spend money that you had because you saved it from Miguel Cabrera to bring in a little bit of a bigger, more established player. I don't care about the bigger name. I wanted an established player who could have helped this team, and you could write him in the lineup every day. I think it's great when you have versatile players, Sean. I really
Mhm.
do. I don't want a team full of versatile players.
100%.
I want to be able to go in and say, and I would say six, minimum of six. I want six everyday players. I know every single game, Riley Green is going to be in left, Parker Meadows is going to be in center, Javier Baez is going to be at short, Spencer Torkelson at first. I need somebody else who's an everyday player. I need a third baseman who's an everyday player and a second baseman an everyday player. Okay. God love Andy Ibanez. God love Zach McKinstry. Go Mac. Fire up chips. But those guys, you're going to bring them in certain situations. I used to say this to AJ Hinch all the time, and I said it to Ron Gardenhire too. The reason your team was so good, there were a lot of different reasons, but when you could pencil in Bregman at third, Correa at short, Altuve at second, they had kind of a little bit of some versatility behind the dish and at first, and in the outfield, you're throwing the same at least two out of the three guys out there every single game, including George Springer. Your job is a lot easier.
100%.
So
100%.
that's the one thing I would worry a little bit about the Tigers. I think Scott Harris is enamored with versatility, And you can say that at the offset and say it's a great plan and that this guy's so valuable. Couple of guys, yes. Everybody else, no. I want the same guys in there every single freaking day. And if you're not, then you don't have a guy who's good enough. And that's a problem.
Alex says, hey, guys, happy opening day. Happy opening day to you. Zach says, I got my Grizz wintergreen, my man, and beer ready to go at 4 o'clock today. Hey, listen, Shep, to your point as well, I want to say this is the first time in years, and I mean years, that on a personal level, I'm sitting back and going, okay, I'm really intrigued. Maybe, just maybe, they can make a run at this division. And I mean, let's face it, the division is down. I don't think the Twins are the Royals of a few years ago, or those Tiger teams that won the division from 11 until 14.
Yeah, no juggernaut. No.
The one thing that I push, Shep, I think this pitching staff has a ton of potential. And if Flaherty is anything like he looked in the spring, my goodness gracious, what a fantastic signing that was. You had an up close and personal look at the maturation of Tarek Skubal last year, who I think the world of the guy. I don't think enough is being said how incredible that guy was down the stretch last year. And if you don't believe me, go look up the numbers. He was lights out. That is something that, as opposed to the false hope during the Avila era, because there was a ton of false hope. Let's be honest, there was a ton of false hope. There are legitimate things that I could look at here, not these mythical creatures down in Erie or the Mexican League or wherever the case may be. There are legitimate pieces here that I can see with my own eyes, instead of hearing about the lore and all these stories of that which I can't see. These are things that people can see now, and that has me juiced up like I haven't been in years about where this Tiger team might be.
Yeah, look, I liked the signing of Jack Flaherty to a certain extent. We got to remember, he's not an old guy. Okay, what is he, 28, Sean? I think he's 28, something like that. And he had, I would argue, a couple of good years with the Cardinals. Okay, just a couple. I mean, he was 11-8 one year. He was 9-2, I think, in 2021, which is, fine, cool. I don't base things off spring training because you don't know who you're seeing. I mean, a lot of times your home games, you're seeing maybe 3 major leaguers in the other dugout, maybe in that lineup. So I'm going to reserve a little bit of judgment there. I always worry, and this is not just baseball, but for any sport, I always worry that we're getting somebody based on what we thought was their reputation. And until you see a guy every single day. So, for example, if you look at Jack Flaherty, who I like, don't get me wrong, but on average in his career, he's an 11-9 pitcher for his career. If you project it, right? I mean, he's not super above 500. And we know it's really important. The good news is, if he's not performing and he doesn't do well, you do have a guy or two in the minor leagues. I was very surprised that Matt Manning didn't make this team. I mean, if we're going to base it off spring training, Matt Manning should definitely have been on this team, right?
Yeah.
I would have guessed. And Ryan Kreidler should have made this team. We know why they didn't. Or we know why Kreidler didn't. I mean, it's basically Gio Urshela. And Gio Urshela is a guy who's been injured a lot. He's not going to give you 130 games, 120 games. You're going to be really lucky if you get that. And I'm not saying Ryan Kreidler should have made the team because of that. If you truly are going to look at it and go, you know what? We're going to put the best team out there, whoever proves it. That's not true, because a lot of it has to do with contracts and options to the minor leagues. Ryan Kreidler had another option.
Yep.
That's the reason he's not there.
Yep. Shep, I want to get your thoughts for a second, maybe on the season prognostications, if you will, and maybe where you think this team will end up. But first, before we do that, to Blake, we got to tell everybody where we are going to be in 8 days. I know Blake and Todd and a few of the other boys are going to be out there. everybody's invited to the Batch Brewing Company located in Corktown. That's going to be your spot for the pregame. As Shep just said, look, it's a party. It's a party in Detroit. It's Detroit party. We have a couple of those coming up. We're going to talk about the NFL draft, which is just 4 weeks away. Yeah, you can enjoy it at Batch as well. They are the official craft beer sponsor of Off the Air. We are going to be out there literally live from 10:30 till noon. If you're going to the game, hell, part of the beauty of opening day is a lot of people just want to go down there and hang out. Well, hang out with us. Fantastic spot. Come watch the shenanigans live and have a good time. Next Friday, opening day, that's the place to be. Batch Brewing Company at 1400 Porter Street. Shep, I think people were a little bit surprised maybe at the win total last year. Again, you had a great seat for that. The big question is, can they take a step up? Is this a team that can, how about this, finish over 500? And I'm not saying necessarily find a way to knock off the Twins, but take that next step. If you think progressively, which Lord knows in sports, it doesn't always work out that way. Heck, I remember back in 97, I thought Buddy Bell and the Tigers, okay, onward and upward next year. And we know what happened, but is this a 500 ball club when all is said and done, Shep?
Well, I would say this, and I said this 2 years ago on TV. Our expectations need to change. It's been since 1984. Okay. In a very winnable division. You and I both talked about how the Chicago White Sox window, we thought it was going to be open for a long time.
Forever.
Yeah. We thought with Abreu and Anderson and Moncada and all these different, Luis Robert, these different talented players.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? Now they're a shell of themselves. That window closed pretty quickly. Cleveland's been able to keep it alive because of their pitching, right? But Detroit was a minus 79 in run production a year ago. We need to remember that they finished 9 games back in the division in what we considered collectively, I believe, what we considered to be a weak division.
No question.
Here was the beauty of it. This should give you hope. Nobody was better in the AL Central against the AL Central than the Tigers. They were 35-17. If you want to challenge a division champion, you must win within the division first and foremost. But their problem was against really good teams, right? Against the American League East, they were 7-25.
Unbelievable.
Not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. So I think personally, our expectations need to change. Enough of this. Well, they haven't said rebuilding, right? But we're rebooting. No, people need to say it's time to win. It's been too long since they have won, and this division is too weak for you not to win. For all these young players that you have spent draft picks on and starting to spend some money on, it's time for you to watch them progress the right way and do it every single day. If you're resting Parker Meadows or Riley Green or Spencer Torkelson 2 times a week, it ain't going to work.
No.
Those guys should be everyday players. You want to rotate in Matt Vierling once in a while with Gio Urshela, put him in right field once. I get it. I totally understand it. It's Vierling and Canna and guys like Andy Ibanez and Zach McKinstry and Gio Urshela, they're trying to find a home. Scott Harris's job is to find those guys who are going to help his team every single day. And then A.J. Hinch put him in the right position. And I think A.J. Hinch, for the most part, did it a year ago. But gosh darn it, man. I mean, this whole belief that, oh, we're getting there. Do we have a chance to be 500 is, to me, unacceptable. Absolutely, they should be 500. That shouldn't be the question. The question should be, how much is this team going to win the division by? That's what people should be asking themselves. That's what they should be talking about. And that should be the expectation. Enough of Minnesota leapfrogging, enough of Cleveland winning games and winning series and winning divisions with guys like Miles Straw, who they just released, by the way.
Yeah. It drives me nuts, Shep, because, I think back in particular that era, maybe 17 to 21, it was all talking about what they were going to do as opposed to what they were doing. And unfortunately, I think for somebody like me, I was too busy yelling at people. There's nothing there. I'm sorry, I was.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
documented. And so
Yeah.
now what's happened is I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of us have got beaten down. Now it's like, okay, we went
100%.
through we went through a bad era, and now I'm going to look at this team as absolutely legitimately as I can, not for what I want them to be,
Right.
but what they are. Raymond brings up a great point.
He
Shep,
does.
you and I grew up. I mean, people don't think about this stuff. We grew up in an era where the dead things and the Red Wings are never going to win a cup. And oh my gosh, a span of 42 years. Think about that. Think about that. We're going to be 40 years this fall.
Yeah.
Unless a miracle happens.
I said it 2 years ago when the season ended.
I love that rant. You know that.
Yeah. I think I had Jack Morris and Dan Petrie next to me. And I said, folks, this is ridiculous. What we've done, you're right. We've been beaten up. We've seen so much bad baseball that when we see mediocre baseball, we're happy. That's what's happened. Oh, these guys are halfway decent, so I'm entertained. If they win 81 games, good for them. It's a progress. That's what I always heard from people.
Yeah.
It's one step at a time.
Progression,
Bull
right?
crap.
It
That's
doesn't work
bull
that way.
crap, man. I'm so sick and tired of that. Why can't you make a leap? And if you're going to make the leap, make it with the young guys, the draft and develop guys. There's no question. We can say what we want about Al Avila, and I think you're right for the most part. But the guys that he drafted, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson and Tarek Skubal and Matt Manning and Casey Mize, those guys should be the heartbeat of your club. And Parker Meadows, because he did draft him. Jake Rogers he traded for. But those should be the heartbeat of your club. And one of them's down in Toledo because of who? I don't know if it's Shelby Miller. I don't know if it's Reese Olson, another draft pick, or brought over. I don't know if it's because of Jack Flaherty, whatever. But those guys should be the core of your club that gives them a chance to win the division. And damn it, there needs to be an expectation of winning the division. We expect the Lions to win the division next year, just like they did last year, right?
Yes.
Because
yes.
Okay. But that's a team that gained some momentum. And I know it's a different sport. I know they played more games and so on and so forth. It's a feeling that you have talking with fans where they're like, well, I'll be happy if they go ... And I thought to myself, I used to think to myself, what the hell does that mean? What do you mean you'll be happy if they compete, if they're playing meaningful games in August? Hell, I was pissed that I said it myself. I said this team should be playing meaningful games in September. No, they should be playing clinching games in September.
No question. No,
that's what they need to do.
I love what you just said about the Lions too, because if we're being honest with ourselves, I think a lot of people a year ago this time we're okay. I'm all about the Lions. Yeah, division. Part of it was we thought the division wasn't going to be that good. And Green Bay had something to say about that, and for all I know, listen, I'm sorry, I haven't broken down the Minnesota Twins roster this year. There are a lot of things going on. Breaking down the Twins roster is one of them. For all I know, maybe the Twins have a big surprise for people. I doubt it. Maybe the Indians do. The Royals, I think a lot of people think that they may take a step up. The White Sox are just a dumpster fire and probably should be for the next few years. But Shep, all the best laid plans. This is one thing that people forget is it's almost like playing the schedule game. We'll get to the draft in a second. It's almost like playing the schedule game with the Lions. I do it. Yeah. But at the same time, I also realize it's futile because what we think we know about a team in April, forget April. What we think we know about a team in September isn't what that team is. And so I think while it's fun to have those conversations as sports fans, keep it in perspective. Maybe this division isn't as bad as we think it is. Maybe it's worse than we think it is. We don't know what we don't know. Paul said division is so weak. Does Ilitch even care about the team? We know his dad sure did. The expectation when Mike Ilitch was alive, he was all in. Now it's mediocrity. Remember when we were good? Stop that. Make this team good, relevant, and go win.
I would say this. The only thing I would warn people about, Minnesota, we think it's a weak division. Minnesota did win, a playoff series a year ago. I would say their top two starters Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez are better than the Tigers' top 2 starters.
No question.
Okay. If you went, that doesn't mean they're deeper. I'm just saying the top 2. Ryan Jeffers, Christian Vasquez. Vasquez is probably more of a defensive-minded catcher, Sean. But they're probably better than the tandem of the Tigers. Carlos Correa is better than Javier Baez. Okay. I don't think Alex Kirilloff's as good as Spencer Torkelson. I think Royce Lewis is better than the third baseman that Detroit puts out there. And then their outfield, I know Max Kepler, and I know they signed Manuel Margot. I forget the others. I think there's a left-handed kid from Minnesota. I think his name's Matt Wallner. He's a pretty good player, but there's a lot to be decided there. Byron Buxton, if he plays outfield, I think they've got him at DH right now.
I mean, he'll be on the DL soon. You can set your watch to it.
Yeah, I know. He'll pull some type of hamstring or something. They're a little bit more talented, I'm saying, than I think we believe them to be. And let's face it. If you and I are doing this in Minnesota or Chicago or Cleveland, are we looking at the Tigers roster and going, holy shit, how are we going to beat them?
No way.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's the Dodgers lineup here. It's not San Diego. Okay. I just think it's not even Seattle. I think we've got to be careful there. But with this division, there's no doubt it's winnable. It's winnable for a few teams, though, not just Detroit.
No doubt. Shep, I know you wanted to get some thoughts on the draft, and we will.
Well, I wanted to ask your thoughts.
Yeah, well,
on the draft.
Have some thoughts. I do.
And the reason I ask you this is because a good friend of yours and mine, Rob Rubik, he and I were talking the other day, and he said, Shep, what does it tell you that if you look at the mock drafts, and I know how you and I feel about mock drafts, but look, those guys talk to a lot of people. I'm not saying they're right, but they're not always wrong either. But what does it say to you that J.J. McCarthy could go in the top 5? And I said, it tells me there's a lot of general managers desperate for quarterbacks. And that's not a knock on J.J. McCarthy. I'm not sure I'm convinced any of the top 5 QBs I would take. Like, I don't know if this is a great year to have number 1. Like, people are fawning over Caleb Williams. I don't think his creativity and his ad-libness will work in the NFL. I like Jaden Daniels, but he's pretty thin. I would worry about him being a little brittle. I don't know enough about Drake May, and I think J.J. McCarthy's a really good player. That doesn't necessarily mean, and I think all of them are decent players. Doesn't mean that they should be top 5 picks. I think it's just the circumstances. So I wanted to ask you about that because when you look at it, it shows you what general managers have told me over the years in covering the NFL. If you don't have a quarterback, you spend every waking moment trying to find one.
I want to get to that in just a second. First, I got to tell you about our friends at Legacy Partners. They're going to be out there next week, as a matter of fact, at Batch Brewing. And I've been saying this for weeks. I hope that you put them to the test. Thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy Partners to get help with their home and auto insurance. Our friends at Legacy are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents. They provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. They have helped our listeners by fixing mistakes with agents that agents have made, asking the right questions to get the right coverage put in place to properly protect you and save you some money. Joe is going to be out there. I think he said Alex and Dave are going to be out there at Batch. Nice. Call them, get your quote, talk to them in person. These guys are here to help you. And chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you're paying too much and you could be underinsured. What are you waiting for? Give Legacy Partners a chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or other business insurance needs. Call them today, 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your new quotes. It doesn't cost you a thing. Get that quote. Find out for yourself. Talk to them in person at Batch next week. It's funny. There are a couple people. I know Bill said Joe Milton might surprise a few people. We remember Joe Milton. Blake said next year's quarterback class is brutal. You know, Blake, to that point, it always seems to me that somebody reveals himself.
Yeah.
I forget what class it was a few years ago. I remember people saying, "Oh, that class is so stinky," and then, you know, in the next year, this guy, you know, kind of pops up out of nowhere. That guy pops up out of nowhere. Shep, Blake, Scott, and Bischoff and I just talked about this in a certain regard a couple days ago. So I'll go. I have worries about really two of them in particular. I have worries about the guy that everybody's consensus pick is at number one.
Mhm.
He's an oddball. That doesn't mean he can't be a great quarterback, but
Yeah.
he's an oddball, and I think that's something to keep an eye on. I really truly do. There have been some kind of eye-popping moments, and look, I'll be the first guy to say it. There have been other oddballs that have been great, but you are talking about, to your point, a team making a gazillion-dollar investment. They want to check the boxes on that investment. I will say this about Jaden Daniels. My thoughts on Daniels before Scott Bischoff showed me like this clip of film, and after the clip of film, he's not only, as you said, a guy that's kind of slight, but for some reason he seems to like contact. And Blake, if you remember, Scott was telling us about that. Well, he sent me this clip of film of you know, him just running into piles and stuff like that. Shep, he's going to get his, I almost said a bad word. He's going to get his wiener knocked out if he tries stuff like that in the NFL. He would.
No, I agree. I mean, but that is a fine
his
line. You
hard,
love
his
the
wiener's
toughness,
and 10 rows up.
right? But you love the toughness of a guy like that too.
Oh, sure, but
I don't.
within
I don't.
reason.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I don't know enough about Drake May at North Carolina, but man, he could spin it. There's no doubt about that, and he's a tough dude. And from everything I've read, he's a hell of a leader. With all that said, let's understand this, and I think Bill's right. Is that Billy Roos who used
Yeah,
to
it is
work
Bill
for the
Roos.
newspaper?
Hi,
Love
Bill.
love Bill Roos.
Great human being.
Yeah, used to work for Red Wings too. Joe Milton, he might surprise people. I don't. Here's the one thing we don't know, because his skill set, his talents are beyond question. Okay. In the NFL, it's not just about being able to throw the ball 80 yards downfield. I don't know how he reads defenses. And I don't think any of us do. I don't know how Caleb Williams reads defenses, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. In talking with people close to the Michigan program, we know JJ McCarthy can. There is a positive in that regard. When you come from a Jim Harbaugh NFL type tree, okay? And I'm not saying Cade McNamara and Wilton Spate and all these other guys, but JJ McCarthy has, no question, he has the physical tools. What we always wonder is, does a guy have the mental tools? And we don't worry about it just with quarterbacks. We wonder about it with cornerbacks too, and tight ends and so on and so forth. He will pass that part of the exam, the whiteboard part of the exam. There's no doubt about it, because under Harbaugh, you're running, to a certain extent, NFL offenses, and you're learning how to read NFL defenses. I mean, think about the defensive coordinators he's had there who are now in the NFL. He sees that stuff on a regular basis in practice. So I don't worry about that part of it. You know, my buddy was saying to me the other day, yeah, but he was a dink and dunk guy. No, he wasn't. I mean, as a matter of fact, his average yards per attempt downfield were 9.5, which in the NFL would have been second. It would have been second to Will Levis of Tennessee, believe it or not. I mean, a guy like Bo Nix was like at 6.8. That's how far of a gap there was just between those two players. And I like Bo Nix, don't get me wrong. But I just found that kind of interesting that so many people are now projecting those four quarterbacks to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the top 5 picks. Marvin Harrison probably the lone exception. And then I was looking at all the wide receivers, Sean. Malik Neighbors is really good.
Yeah.
Odunze in Washington, really good. I don't know if there's much separation between those 3 guys, let alone the quarterbacks. It could be the wide receivers too.
I want to go back to the quarterbacks, because one of the funny things, Shep, and I got JJ McCarthy's back in this argument. One of the funny things about the drafts and the mock drafts is, I openly admit I'm a draft mockaholic. Okay, I have a problem. The first step is admitting the problem. I have a problem, but I also say, if you're paying attention to these things in January or February and you think there's any validity to them, you're out of your mind, because more often than not, guys are throwing things against the wall. Okay, they are. Okay. Then we start to find out what the teams really think. Blake and I, the first mock draft that we looked at, this is like the last week of January, had J.J. McCarthy going late first round, early second round. And I didn't buy that at all.
Yeah.
I think J.J. McCarthy is about as close to NFL ready of those guys as you can think. I really do, because some of the reasons that you gave, that guy rolling out and that throw that he makes on the run, that laser that he throws, you can't put a price tag on that. You just can't. And we've seen him do that so many times. It's funny that you mentioned Drake, because to me, North Carolina has become the designated noon game on ESPN. It seems like they're always on at noon on ESPN. That's, okay, we got to take care of our boy Mac. And I don't want to say that he's another quote unquote Mac Brown quarterback, because I think in years gone by, Mac Brown quarterbacks have been incredibly overrated, both at Texas and at North Carolina. I don't want to say that, but there's not a wow factor there for me. Does that make sense? There's not a,
I think his arm is a wow factor for me anyway.
Okay.
I think he's got one of the strongest arms I've seen. Joe Milton, to Bill's point, same thing. But I thought Zach Wilson had a really strong arm at BYU.
100%.
And he does. But that doesn't make him a good quarterback.
No, absolutely not. So I don't know. There are things to like and dislike about all of them. But you were asking me last night, and listen, you know me. You know who I root for. Let me show you my hat. But you have a job to do. I like J.J. McCarthy a lot. I think
so. If the Bears, if you were the Bears, would you take him first over Caleb Williams?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay. No, because you have to. They are looking at now. If you're asking me, he terrifies me. I'm not going to lie, but it is an investment, and you want to get bang on your buck. And I think that's what the Bears are looking at. I think Caleb could go one of two ways. I think he could be a very special NFL player, or he could flake out. Are you willing to take that chance? And I think a lot of guys, we'll get him. We have some veterans. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Tom said JJ has a high ceiling and is very coachable, which is quite attractive to some teams.
Yeah. I also think his mental state is really impressive.
Yeah.
He can play through stuff. Too often we use a word to describe a certain player, but I do think it's appropriate here. Winner. Dude's a winner. And there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for a guy who has, I don't know if you want to call it intangible or not, Sean, something to be said for a guy who brings people along with him. Some would say that's leadership. From the people who I know who know him and have dealt with him ever since he's been in college, they have said he is a guy who attracts people. Like, people gravitate toward him because they're willing to follow him. I say this about athletes all the time. And you and I both played our entire lives. It's one thing to be a leader. It's another thing for another leader to follow you.
Yep.
Because these guys are all, type A personalities. These guys have all been the best players on their teams growing up their entire lives. So it takes a really special person to say, come follow me, when that guy over there has been the guy everyone's been following.
100%.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about our friends at Wealth Advantage Group. Of course, the Handsome Brothers, not to be confused with the Hanson Brothers of Slapshot fame. The Handsome Brothers, there they are. Handsome Mike, Handsome Jeff. If you are ready to take charge of your financial future, you need to look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville, owned by those two brothers, the Handsome Brothers, with over 20 years of industry experience. They understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, you're getting ready to sell your company, maybe you're already retired, they can help guide you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life, have clients in over 20 states. The investment world, it is a complex one, but if you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it might be time to work with a couple of experts. Reach out to those guys at the Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574 or visit their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Appreciate certainly Mike and Jeff and everything that they do. Shepard, you just go ahead.
Let me ask you a question before we wrap things up here.
Mm-hmm.
You showed the Spartan on your hat.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with Draymond Green?
Wow, is that a great question? You know what, Shep? I think his heart's in the right place. I think genuinely, I think he wants to, quote unquote, do the right thing. And I've heard him say he wants to do the right thing. But, they're just head scratching moments. I guess that's the best way to say it. You came out of left field with that. That was pretty good.
I'm trying to figure out. He's an immensely talented player. We all know that. Trying to figure out if he's selfish or not. And the reason I ask that is because, and you said this about the NBA, it is a look at me league, probably more than most. He seems to be a look at me player more than most. And when you have other players on your team shaking their head, and maybe Steph Curry's shaking his head because he can't believe that the referee Acosta actually teed him up so quickly. But you get ejected 4 minutes into a game, 4 minutes in, knowing his reputation. And I'm not saying he was deserved. Okay, don't take that wrong. Ray Acosta, the referee who ejected him, might have had it in for him. I don't know. But I do know this. Golden State needs him. And they're in the fight for a playoff spot. You want to chirp at the official? That's fine. That's whatever. But once you get the technical, you need to swallow your pride, shut up, and sit down.
100%. He
doesn't seem to have the capability of doing that. This guy's getting endorsements based off his reputation.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. He needs Shep, I really do think, and from talking to people that have been associated with him, I've heard people say, including Coach Izzo, he's a really good guy. Sometimes he gets the emotions, let the emotions get the best of him. Okay. And that is an arduous process that not a lot of us can learn to master until we're well into our 40s for some people. But no, all jokes aside, Shep, when you're continuously doing things that put your team at a disadvantage, you open yourself up to questions like that. Especially, it's easy to chuckle and go, ha ha ha, boy, that's Draymond being Draymond, when you're rolling up 60 wins. But when you're in the position that you're in right now, and these wins mean something, those questions are going to come from everywhere. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah, he's already served 2 suspensions. Remember, he got somebody in a headlock. He was fighting another player. You want to stick up for guys. I'm all for that. You know that. This is not the NHL. It's very interesting. When in hockey, referees don't seem to have rabbit ears. Like John Tortorella, players in general. You don't believe me? Just go YouTube some things about being mic'd up, how great it is. The stuff they say to referees, and the referees are able to skate away,
Yeah.
NBA, that's not the case. Major League Baseball, oftentimes not the case. You can say a few things, but God forbid you actually argue a strike, which has taken, I think, so much out of the game of baseball.
Oh,
bring back the arguing, for crying out loud.
Amen.
Right?
I need Earl Weaver.
Without a doubt. Bobby Cox got thrown out more than anybody.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at it, and the NBA, and it's a chirp here or a chirp there. Finally, if a referee has enough, and all these guys know these referees so well, Sean, they do. They're on first name basis with all these guys. They know exactly who they're getting. Every single time you go into an NBA locker room, you go into a Major League Baseball clubhouse, the referees' names and faces are pasted up there. Just to give you a refresher. Draymond Green gets the first tech. Warranted. I don't know what he said. Let's just give the referee the benefit of the doubt. once you know that everything after that is subject to sensitivity.
Yep.
That it takes a little bit more. It may push Sean's kids may push him to the limit. I can take it, 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 and then boom. After that, once you snap, the next rebuttal from your kids, you're not going to be, I can take it, I can take it. It's going to be quicker.
Yeah.
That's human nature.
Yeah.
And yet Draymond Green, it just doesn't seem to click with him. I don't get it.
You know, it is funny. There are some guys that I always use the analogy like you're making a pot of stew, right, Shep? You're making a pot of stew. And
You're making me
all
hungry
right,
now.
I'm gonna go make one in a few, maybe chili. But you know what? You throw in a potato, you throw in a carrot, and then it's coming to the top, and then you throw in that last giant potato, and it bubbles over. There are some guys like that, and that I think people forget for officials as well.
Yeah.
I've talked to officials not at the highest level, but at different. Sometimes they have a bad day too. Okay,
Right.
they do. Sometimes, hey, I heard this guy call me a bleep bleep 10 days in a row and it never bothered me. But today, for some reason, get your ass out of here. And
That's right.
that's the way that it works. But Shep, I think it's a good point because I think when it becomes a detriment and something that hangs over your head in that look at me kind of regard, then we have to figure out, well, how much are we really helping the team? How
think of this too, Sean. Here's a guy who got in a fight with his teammate.
I know.
At practice, punched him in the face, and basically forced that team, Golden State, to trade that player,
Yep.
Jordan Poole.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Poole, everyone on that team would tell you, is missed. Really good player. He just plays for a crappy team in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
But for Golden State, he was a pretty important player. And I think I'm not going CTE. I'm not going that mentally disturbed and all that stuff. But I just worry about the selfishness because he was never, ever that type of player, A, at MSU, and B, early on in his career.
No.
But now he has become this guy that it's all about him. And the reason so many people loved him and the reason he was an all-star is because it was about everybody else but him.
Yep.
Great passer, great rebounder, great leader, arm over the shoulder. Something's changed. And when, I don't know. I'm not claiming that it's as drastic as the Dennis Rodman saga, because I sure don't see him dressing in a wedding dress anytime soon. I just can't figure it out, man. I cannot figure out when it turned with him and how it's gone so far to the other side.
If I see him in North Korea, all bets are off, though. If he heads out to hang out with Kimmy and, we're gonna work on some rebounding in North Korea, all bets are off.
See, I didn't know this. Tom wrote he also got into a shouting match with Steve Kerr. Didn't realize that.
Yeah, you can't. It's an issue. Let me tell you about our friend Lindsey Broadwell before we get out of here. When it comes time to buy, sell, both, doesn't matter. You need to contact the right agent. That agent is Lindsey Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsey grew up on the mean streets of Northville and has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of business. Now, when it's time to move, our friend Lindsey and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and that everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyer, seller, first-time buyers, doesn't matter. Make sure you contact Lindsey at BroadwellHomes.com. She will help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Shep, we got to get out of here, but only a few minutes. I hope your whole family coming in for Easter. You got everybody, the whole clan.
My wife's super excited, and you know what it's like. Mama Bear is always happy when everybody's under the same roof.
Blessed Easter to you guys. Unfortunately, we don't see Jack, but my daughter's coming home, so we're going to make the best of it. Have a great Easter weekend to all of you as well. Shep, we'll talk again next week. For Shep, I'm Sean. See ya.